Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and like a bat out of hell, Castlevania has returned. It's a fantastic finale that has a lot to sink your teeth into, and throughout this video we'll be recapping Season 4, its ending, and talking about our thoughts on it as a whole. Full spoilers ahead, so if you haven't had a chance to check it out, then I highly recommend that you check out now. Make sure you smash the thumbs up button, and don't forget to subscribe for videos worth rising from the dead for. With that out of the way, thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into Castlevania Season 4. Okay, so the finale has a lot at stake. Not only does it wrap up the show as a whole in outstanding fashion, but it also ties into the mythos of Dracula and sets up several potential spin-offs. I'm going to be recapping big chunks of the plot and discussing how they lay the groundwork for the future, but timecodes will be linked below if you want to skip ahead to a certain section. Now Season 3 ended with a lot of things up in the air, including the impending vampire war between Carmilla and Isaac's forces. With her sister Lenor, she managed to manipulate Hector into using his Forge Master abilities, which he planned on utilizing in order to build an empire. Alucard went from desperate, lonely man to the new Dracula, and Trevor and Sypha met with a time traveler named Count Germain. Germain was searching for his wife, and he ended up journeying through the infinite corridor at the end of the series. Season 4 picks up a couple of weeks after the events of the prior entry, and many of the characters in it have become warped because of the things that played out in it. Trevor and Sypha wander throughout the land for weeks on end, battling evil forces, still down for the count like a bad boxer. They unearth a murder plot which involves killing people en masse to bring Dracula back, and it's one of the more bloodier season intros that we've had so far. It's clear that the pair are still in shock over what they witnessed in Lindenfeld, and the events of this have changed their perspective on life. Sypha even says shit now, which, oh how things have changed. They believed that everything would be over after killing Dracula, but they're now spending the rest of their lives stopping people from resurrecting him, which of course they're not very glad about. I'm sorry, that was terrible. Now in the series, Trevor acquires a specialized dagger that is powerful enough to stop death itself, and we'll talk about how this culminates later on in the video. However, putting a halt to the resurrection of Dracula very much becomes their arc in the season and the driving force in their lives. Initially, Belmont is scorned by this burden, and he believes that it has stripped his life of all meaning. However, it's through this final season he realizes that simply isn't the case. Because of this task before him, he finally finds something that is greater than himself and is worth fighting for. It's given his life a purpose beyond what he initially thought, and it sort of brings everything full circle for the character. We'll talk about his fate later on, but along the way we are introduced to Varney, who becomes a big character in the series that everyone has been dying to meet, Now he reaches out to Isaac, who remains one of the most interesting characters in the entire show. He debates philosophy with his own ranks and discusses his own dichotomy. Isaac and his forces are metaphorically hammers, as they can be used as weapons of destruction. However, they can also be used to construct and build something new. Though revenge still drives him, he very much wants to build a better world in the end. This motif very much speaks to the opening episodes of Season 4, and when we're not dealing with action, what we get are highly introspective looks with the characters, who regularly cross-examine what they've been through, what it has cost, and why it has changed them. Isaac's opposite is of course Hector, who is in a much better position than he was in the last season. Whereas he was a prisoner in that, he's now got free reign of Carmilla's castle and her wine cellar. His Forge Master abilities are very important, but Carmilla knows he's up to something, and he wanders throughout the castle planting coins. However, he does start to transform the dead, ultimately to fight in Carmilla's war. Unfortunately though, all this waiting and futility makes her sisters start to become disillusioned with her plans. Striga even calls the forces they're fighting livestock, and she very much views her sending her undead stock, I think it is, as a waste of energy. Never before has a show managed to capture the boredom that would come with immortality, and having all the time in the world gives them time to question the point of their war. They're fighting over pointless farmland, and much like Trevor and Sypha initially did, they believe that they're stuck in a never-ending cycle. Elsewhere, Alucard, though cut off from humanity, gets another chance at life when a villager known as Greta reaches out to him to come and save her home. This gives him a new purpose in life, and he utters the line, "I'm turning into Belmont," which ultimately hints to him getting another life with a new partner. Finding a purpose is very much what drives every character in the show, and whether it's the Belmonts looking for a reason behind all the killing they're doing, Alucard protecting the people of Dynasty, Carmilla's sisters seeing the futility of war, or Isaac wanting to build a better future, each character is trying to find a reason for their existence. Now nowhere is this represented more than in Bill Nighy's Saint Germain, who is desperately searching for his wife. He reappears in Dynasty, and we recount how he met his lover and what happened to him after the events of Season 3. In the Infinite Corridor, he found himself unable to control his destination, and eventually he entered the library only to find that his love had moved on. He does, however, come across an apparent alchemist who tells him that he must sacrifice everything he believes in order to get his love back. We learn that he was actually in contact with Varney, and though he gives him little respect, like most of the characters in the show, they want the same thing. Many of the massacres that Trevor and Sypha come across were actually caused by him, and it was Saint Germain all along. Now he appears to be donning the red coat from the game that was almost hidden under his green cloak in the last season, and he does start to line up more with the source material. His purpose drives him to selfishly commit all kinds of atrocities, and it becomes clear he's willing to do anything to complete his goals. He suggests to Alucard that in order to gain refuge, the villagers should move to his home, which brings him closer to his endgame. Elsewhere, Isaac sends his forces to storm Carmilla's castle, and it's here we get something I really wasn't expecting. Though he's held a vendetta against Hector, he ends up sparing his life because he has an epiphany that they were both simply the tools of someone else. This very much ties back to his line about hammers and how they can be used as both tools to build and also destroy. He sees himself as someone wanting to become the hand that holds the hammer rather than the hammer itself, and I really hope that I've nailed that metaphor. Now he relinquishes control of the vampires and thus weakens Carmilla's army. Using the coins that Hector placed throughout the castle, Isaac creates a powerful prison to hold Carmilla in place, and the battle between the pair is bloody and brutal. She ends up destroying herself in a last-ditch attempt to kill the character, and promises to wait for him in hell, where she will relish torturing him for eternity. It's a chilling way for her to go out, and probably the most badass death in this entire season. Now together, Morana and Striga arrive to see their home destroyed, and thus they decide to break free of the control that they've been subjected to and go somewhere else. Possibly a spin-off, which we'll talk about later. Now for Carmilla's sisters, their arc was very much about breaking free of the path that they had been forced to walk on. This is reflected in Hector and Isaac, who want to break free of what was meant for them. They decide not to resurrect Dracula, and instead Isaac decides to build something positive for the future. Now whether he returns or not, we don't know, but this does juxtapose his arc in the game series, as he was used to resurrect Dracula. He ended up being driven mad by this possession and was killed in order to free him of this torment. Initially he was a very tragic character, but here it's a far more positive ending for him. Mirroring breaking free of this path, we too see it echoed in Lenor's final act. She realizes that she's pretty much lived a life of servitude, being controlled by others. Thus, she doesn't want to go on being constantly kept in a cage and decides to break free of it. Lenor goes onto the balcony to watch the sun rise and ends her own life in a last act that shows she found some freedom in death. It's a great scene for the character and a tear-jerking way to end her journey. Now the characters who realize they should focus on their lives instead of bringing back the dead have a far more positive outcome, and we head into the final arc of the season with Dracula's resurrection taking the main focal point. Varney travels to find a mirror that will transport him to where Dracula was killed, and this is buried in the caverns of a city that was attacked by the character. He runs into Trevor and Sypha along the way, who travel with him to the location. Here we catch Saint Germain attempting to pull Dracula and Lisa out of hell, and he wishes to fuse their souls into a hermaphrodite body using his alchemy, which will create a divine new being powerful enough to control the Infinite Corridor with. Yes, it's a bit convoluted, but this is where everything comes to a head, and Trevor and Sypha join Alucard's side as they attempt to not only stop the forces laying siege to the castle, but also Germain's plans. It's an incredible way to close out the season finale, and they definitely saved the best for last in terms of action. It's rare that a show manages to stick the landing in this day and age, but Castlevania completely knocks it out of the park in these final moments. In the basement, Varney reveals that he's been manipulating things from the shadows, and not only was he the alchemist that Germain met in the library, but also death itself. Though many cultures believe the entity to be, well, just the Grim Reaper, Death is actually a vampiric creature that feasts on, well, death. Since the beginning of time, he has manipulated worldwide events so that great losses of life will be caused, and he has wished to bring Dracula and Lisa back into this combined body because he knows it will cause him to become even more mad, leading to more deaths. People just aren't dying like they used to, and thus he has manipulated several of the characters in order to achieve this goal, so that his thirst for death can be quenched. It's a great twist that I don't think anyone could have predicted, and it's a brilliant inclusion of a character who has appeared in many of the games in the series. Germain pulls their spirits through and into the body, which I can't really show in action because of cartoon titties. YouTube just doesn't like cartoon titties. Now Belmont manages to break through the barrier and he destroys the body as well as the gateway to hell. Germain spots his lover through the infinite corridor, but she closes the doorway, leaving him not only having lost her, but also himself because of what he was willing to do. The final battle finds Belmont going head to head with death, and using the special dagger he gained earlier, he manages to defeat the evil entity. Stabbing the creature with this not only sucks it, but also Belmont into the void, and though it initially seems like he is dead, we discover that the character is alive and that he was merely transported through the infinite corridor. Weeks later, Sypha goes to leave the castle, and we discover that she is pregnant. This is likely Simon, who in the series would go on to continue their legacy of vampire hunting. Now whilst this has been announced as being the final season, Deadline recently posted an article that said Netflix were eyeing some spin-off series that would follow different characters. I feel like we need to talk about this before diving into how the season ends, and if they go this route, I can see Sypha and Trevor raising their child to become the next big protagonist in the show's continuity. We also see Alucard, a man who has found nothing but loneliness, deciding to settle down with Greta and create a village called Belmont. It's definitely called Belmont. Now Alucard looks happy for the first time in a while, and we learn that his parents' spirits have remained outside of hell and that they plan to return to their son when the time is right. However, they realise that he has gained some closure and don't want to rob him of this, and thus enact a slightly different plan. The pair want to move to England, namely Whitby, which highly ties in with Dracula lore. In Bram Stoker's novel, this was actually the location that the villain travelled to after he left Transylvania. I've been there a couple of times myself, and it's got a great, haunting, atmospheric cathedral at the top of a hill that looms over the city. There's a real atmosphere to it, and I recommend that you visit it if you're ever able to. Yes, this video was sponsored by Whitby. Now together, they will have a life there, and when the time is right, return to their son. No doubt their legend will continue, and I can actually see the potential spin-off series chronicling their new life in Europe. Dracula finally has the woman he loved, and he's back out into the world. Though we don't know exactly how they survived, it is possible that in the destruction of death, their souls and bodies remained in the mortal world, and this is how they were able to come back. They will reunite with Alucard one day, which will likely be the culmination of both their arc and his, in which we will be able to see what happened after the events of this show, if they get the spin-off, which we better get the spin-off. Now, whilst no spin-offs have been announced yet, as of making this video, when the show's this good, it would suck if they didn't. I'm not sure if it's the best season just yet, as I only finished it today and haven't had time to sit with it properly, but at the very least, it does feel like the best season. As mentioned earlier, it's rare that a show can deliver a satisfying ending, but Castlevania Season 4 definitely does. This feels like a great conclusion to everyone's arc, and I really hope that we get some news about the story continuing in some form or another. Thank you Netflix for bringing this to the screen, and you know what to do next, just give us more. Castlevania was incredible, and it gets a 9 out of 10. Now obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts on the show, so make sure you comment below and let me know. As a thank you for interacting with the video, you'll be entered into a prize drawn the 30th of May, in which we're giving away 3 copies of the Godzilla vs. Kong collection. All you have to do to be on the chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the season. The winners of last month's competition are on screen right now, so if that's you, then message me on Twitter at Heavy Spoilers. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of the ending of Resident Evil 8, which will be linked on screen right now. We went over all the events in Village and talked about the final few scenes, so it's definitely worth playing out if you want a bit more horror related video game stuff. With that out of the way, thank you for sticking through the video, I've been Paul, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.